Welcome to my channel, ketomealsandrecipes.com. Today I'm going to make some really surprisingly delicious pasta, which is a perfect substitute for wheat-based pasta. I'm really proud of this recipe, and I believe you will be pleased with how good this new carnivore pasta tastes, and also how easy it is to make. If you like my recipes and what I do, I would ask that you please support my channel by watching the entire video as I show you how I made this version of pasta. Also, I would be really grateful if you would share the link to this video or my channel with someone you think might also enjoy my recipes. My family and I really enjoy this zero-carb, high-protein carnivore pasta. The taste, the texture, and mouthfeel are absolutely amazing. And best of all, it holds and reacts just like regular pasta in any sauce you add it to. This is by far my favorite recipe for making spaghetti-style noodles or udon noodles, which I use for my Japanese and Asian meals. Here I'm posting as a convenient guide the macronutrient ratio for the carnivore pasta, which is 0.6 to 1. This is because of the very high protein content. This pasta also has 1.7 grams of total carbs, 0.1 grams of dietary fiber, resulting in 1.6 grams of net carbs per serving. One thing that you'll find is this pasta comes together very, very quickly, so I highly recommend you gather and prepare and weigh out all of your ingredients. The reason this recipe is so quick to make is because you can make it in a food processor, or alternatively, if you have a very high-speed Vitamix blender or something like that, you can do it in a blender. But quite frankly, I really do prefer using a food processor. As my prep, I begin by cutting the boneless, skinless chicken breast into small cubes. This will make it much easier to process and blend. Having done that, I transfer all the chicken cubes into my food processor bowl. Then I sprinkle the salt and then the baking soda over the chicken cubes. The next ingredient is not strictly carnivore, so I leave it as an optional item for you to decide on. However, I am going to add turmeric powder. That's because I really like the little bit of enhancement to the taste that it gives, and the turmeric powder also enhances the color of the pasta so it looks more like the store-bought or wheat-based pasta. As I said, this is optional and it's up to you. Then put the lid on your food processor. Then process your ingredients until you get a very smooth, homogeneous mixture. This should take about 2 to 3 minutes. The next ingredient I'm going to add is my cubed room temperature cream cheese, and then blend it and process to combine. Now it's time to get your room temperature eggs and give them a whisk with a fork. And while you're processing, pour the eggs in so they blend really well. I would recommend that every once in a while, like now, and scrape the side of the food processor bowl to ensure that all the ingredients are being worked into the paste. Now for the next step, I really recommend that you pay attention and follow my directions exactly. While you're continuing to blend or process, very slowly in an even flow, pour in the dry beef gelatin powder. It's really important that you do not pour it in quickly or in one big heap. If you do, you will get gelatin clumps that do not blend into the mixture and your pasta just won't turn out. And that's because the gelatin is the binding agent that holds the pasta together, since we are using only carnivore-based ingredients and we have no gluten like in wheat pasta. After adding the gelatin, I again stop and scrape the sides and bottom of the container because I want all of the gelatin to be incorporated. So far, so good. The next thing we do, while continuing to blend, spoon in the egg white powder, 1 tablespoon at a time. After you've added all of the egg white powder, blend for 1 more minute. I forgot to mention, while I was making the pasta paste, I placed my pot of water onto the stovetop, which is set to medium-low heat, or about 88 to 93 degrees Celsius, which is a very light simmer. And how you'll know that it reaches this temperature if you don't have an instant read thermometer like mine, you will notice a light ring of bubbles on the perimeter and a very light steam rising from the water. And here's another very important point. Do not boil the water. Please stay to the temperature as I've indicated. Now back to the pasta. After I blended all my ingredients and they were ready, I took a look at how thick my carnivore pasta mixture was. I think this mixture is just a little bit too thick. In order to thin out the meat pasta so that I could squeeze it through a piping bag, I started by ladling in 5 tablespoons of the simmering water I have on the stove top. This warm water will soften the carnivore mixture and make it much easier to squeeze through the little hole in my piping bag. The carnivore pasta mixture is perfect, so I'm going to transfer it into a piping bag. You can either use a regular medium-sized metal tip or cut the opening for the size of pasta you want to make. By the way, I found these disposable piping bags with the attached firm tips at my grocery store. They were really inexpensive for quite a few of them. I can't remember how many exactly. So after filling my bag, I cut a very small hole in the blue tip to make spaghettini, and I began to squeeze out the pasta into the simmering water on my stovetop. I have to admit, I did kind of find it hard to control the pressure and to prevent the strands of pasta from breaking before I made them to the length I wanted. After a few tries and getting a better grip on my piping bag, I was able to get better results and longer strands of pasta. So just after a little bit of practice, I got the hang of it. In this first batch, I made the thin spaghettini, and it really looked and felt like spaghettini. But what I really wanted to do is to make thicker, more of the Udon style noodles. And to do that, I just enlarged the opening in the tip of my piping bag. I was really happy with this thicker noodle because it's absolutely perfect for my next recipe. And I hope you'll come back and check that video too. Let's get back to the simmering pot of water, into which I again squeezed the warm paste. In order that I could handle this piping bag better and have consistent pressure on the bag, I reduced the quantity of the carnivore paste I put into the bag. Also, to get a good grip on the piping bag, I twisted the bag opening to push all the pasta mixture to the bottom. Then I wound the bag around my fingers like this. And also by holding the bag really securely and squeezing from the top and at the same time near the nozzle, I had much more control of the pressure, which allowed me to make 12-inch or 30-centimeter long pasta more consistently. In order not to crowd my pasta, for each batch I would squeeze about 6 to 10 strands at a time. As I squeezed out the several batches I made, sometimes the strands would break because of the air bubbles, but that didn't happen too often. So if you can, please try to fill your bag so that it doesn't have air bubbles. Once you've squeezed out all the strands for each batch, just leave everything alone in the water. Then let the water heat up and let the pasta cook until the strands float to the surface. It's similar to when you're cooking gnocchi or dumplings. You want them to float up. If you're wondering, I found that the cooking time per batch was about 30 to 40 seconds. Not any longer. Don't overcook. When your pasta is on the surface of the water, use a slotted spoon to scoop out and transfer the pasta onto a plate. Then just repeat until all of the carnivore pasta paste has been used up. And that's all there is to making this carnivore pasta. At this point, your pasta is ready to be used, and you can use it as is with a little bit of butter or with the sauce of your choice. At this point, I would like to share a few additional tips for this carnivore pasta. First, you can store leftover carnivore pasta in an airtight container in your refrigerator for 2 to 3 days. Alternatively, get a parchment-lined baking sheet and distribute the pasta in a single layer in small little batches that will fit inside a freezer-safe container. Place this into a freezer, and when your pasta is frozen, carefully transfer it into the freezer-safe container, label and date it, and now this carnivore pasta can be stored in the freezer for a few months. To reheat your frozen pasta, just add it to a pot of simmering water like when you first made it. Not too hot, remember. And as soon as your reheated pasta floats to the top, immediately scoop it out and use it while hot. I've already mentioned that this carnivore pasta is 0 carb and protein rich. What I haven't mentioned is, because of this, it's extremely filling, much more so than keto pasta. So I think you'll find that you'll need a much smaller serving than you would as compared to regular wheat pasta or keto pasta made with almond, coconut, or any of the non-wheat flours. As one final point, I just want to mention that I have just started to add more carnivore recipes to my diet because I want to increase the quantity of protein I eat and simultaneously also reduce my total carbs per day. As a diabetic, I'm trying to stay under 20 total carbs. If you have any tips or suggestions on how you're doing on a carnivore diet or a ketovore diet or just on a keto diet, please leave me a comment. I love reading your comments, suggestions, and advice. This is what I find very gratifying about posting these videos. Before ending this video, I would like to thank Chris Cooks Nashville for the inspiration for this recipe. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch my video. I truly appreciate you for taking the time. I hope that you have found this carnivore pasta recipe useful and something you can use in your meal planning. Please come back when I post my next video, and until next time, have a happy and healthy day. Cheers!